the 1951 flood. It devastated the Kaw Valley, which is along the Kansas River from Milford and possibly west of there, but from Milford clear to Kansas City, Kansas, and Kansas City, Missouri. It flooded and rained for 2 weeks, and you could not get across the river anywhere between Manhattan and Kansas City. And you couldn't get past Kansas City in order to get south of the river because of all the flooding. There was a Brickyard Bridge Road, Brickyard Bridge on that came out north of off of Gage in Topeka, and it went straight, and then it sloped down for about 8 feet, and then it went straight again. And my dad was carrying the Topeka State Journal, and the bridge fell in 20 minutes after he had gone past. And we had heard on the radio that the bridge had fallen in, and we knew that he might have been on it because they didn't know how many, some cars had gone in. They did save the people that had gone in, but we didn't know whether one of them was Daddy or not until that evening when he came home. And it was just a very scary time of life. I was 12, and it just rained and rained and rained. So the waters didn't recede for a 2-week period of time. It was, there were, at the time, my husband's grandfather lived on the north of Rossville, or not south of Rossville, but north of the Kaw River, and the river was out so bad, and several people said, well, have you seen Schuyler Conley? And nobody had. And they knew he liked to get out in his boat and see things like that because he did have a boat. So my husband and father went down to check on him, and he had his appendix had burst. He had appendicitis. and they had to get him out into the boat and get him to a spot where a medical helicopter could pick him up and take him to the hospital. But he passed away 3 days later because gangrene had already set in. He'd been sick for probably 4 days. And there were tragedies like that up and down the river. Uh, the only thing that was, I was 12 and I thought it was kind of an exciting time too to see all this. My dad carried the Topeka State Journal on the north and the south side of the river, but since we were on the north side and couldn't get to the south side, we carried the Topeka Daily Capital for one of the other carriers. And we'd go down at 4 o'clock in the morning to the north end of the Topeka Boulevard Bridge, where Arthur Capper had, it's called Stauffer's Publications now, but Arthur Capper started it, and it was Capper Publications then. And he hired a helicopter to bring the capitals over to the north side of the bridge, and Daddy'd pick them up from there, and we'd put them in our car, and we got to do the route up around from Meriden, Ozaukee, Oskaloosa, Bennington, all those places up east of Holton, and then go across 36 Highway to Seneca and Marysville. It was as far west as we went, but threw papers in between because the Todd High had given Dad the instructions, and my dad had given him the instructions for the journal route south of the river, and so it was. For 2 weeks we carried his route, and 6 days a week, and on Sunday also. My dad had a paper route around Rossville on Sunday, but he couldn't get to most of the places. We had to go. We lived north a mile, 3 miles east, and a half mile north, and we could get out by going on north to get on a road that would go past where the flooding was, and that's how we got to Topeka. And so the Daddy just had Stoffers keep the capitals for all his route, and so then the first Sunday that he could carry it, he threw all the Sunday papers for those people because they wanted to see what the news was from the other days, like the weddings and celebrations. And